The single biggest thing that made people happy and was statistically showed increased life expectancy was the quality of their relationships.
Welcome to Homes That Heal, the podcast that transforms your life and home into a sanctuary of health, healing, and happiness. Hi, I'm Jen Heller, a wellness educator, infrared sauna expert, and your guide to living intentionally. Each week, we'll explore a variety of wellness tools, along with detoxification, weight loss, and anti-aging tips to boost your energy and align your mind and body so you can thrive in life, not just survive. Your health is your wealth, and it all starts at home. Let's dive in and create a home that heals. Hey friends, Jen here. Welcome back to Homes That Heal. Thanks for tuning in today. I am super grateful you are here. We are officially in the magical bliss of the holiday season, plus on the home stretch for the last couple of weeks of 2025. Can you believe this year is coming to a close? I can't. Although it kind of feels like it flew by, but it also feels like it was a million miles long. But what a year it has been. I want to share a few teasers and exciting announcements I have coming up before I tell you who's on the show today. First, I have a very, very special show next week. I'll be walking through the highlights of 2025, plus sharing some exciting plans and changes coming for 2026. Trust me, even I'm a little nervous, but mostly excited to tell you what's up for the new year. So stay tuned for what's coming next week. Second, episode 81 in 2 weeks. Write this down, friends. You don't want to miss it. I'm going to dig into some real clear, actionable ways you can step into the new year with clarity. I'm not just talking about weight loss or kicking bad sugar habits. I'm talking spiritual upgrade, energetic alignment, wellness routines you can stick to, and how you can legit transform your life and home into a much more joyful, soul-led, and healthy experience. So yes, we're going to be digging in deep in 2026, and I'm going to lay out some groundwork in episode 81. So if you haven't done so already, please follow and subscribe to the show so you don't miss a thing. Okay, so let's chat about my guest today, Talor Stewart. You guys, I have to tell you, full disclosure, the way in which Talor and I became connected was nothing short of a guided God moment of divine alignment. I want to just tell you how amazing this universe is and how aligned we're living when we pay attention. Here's why. I have an amazing team that manages and monitors the general inbox for Jen Heller Lifestyle, and I rarely pop into that inbox unless my team tells me to or tags me to something specific. We get a lot, and I mean a lot of emails daily for a variety of guest requests, collaborations, random invites, the usual spammers, people telling me they can send my YouTube channel to the moon. For real, it's literally a full-time job to monitor this inbox. I popped into it to check on something quickly, and my eyes were totally drawn to 3 single words that stuck out like they were the only 3 words on the screen. The 3 words were conscious home design. I said these 3 glorious words out loud, opened the email, read what I can only describe as music to my Homes That Heal ears, and literally 3 days later, I'm on a Zoom with the person I've been wishing existed to connect with. I've been praying to meet someone who I could go deeper into the conversation about how to create a consciously designed home. And boom, the universe was like, okay, Jen, here you go. And he literally wrote me an email inviting me for a conversation. So here we are. You guys, I'm so incredibly giddy and excited to introduce you to Talor. He's an award-winning architect and the author of Conscious Home Design. Over the past 20 years, he's developed the conscious home design philosophy, and his book illustrates these principles in a very easy to understand way so anyone can create more flow, ease, and grace in their home. Not only is he totally dialed into creating a magical and meaningful living space, but he also has this clarity and grounded energy about him that makes everything feel divine and peaceful. We're going to walk you through what truly makes people happy, how each room in your home has purpose, and how you can transform it into an intentional living experience. Thanks again for tuning in, you guys, today. Please welcome Talor Stewart to the show. Hello, Talor. How are you today? Thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, Jen. I'm well, thanks. It's an honor to be with you today.
Oh, well, first of all, the honor is mine because I feel like today is probably going to be one of the most divine conversations that I've had in a long time because
I
I'm
hope
so
so.
excited to talk to you. Yeah, I think that
Yeah, great.
you are literally the guy who, yeah, you are literally the guy who helps people create a home that heals. So I am so excited to dive into this conversation about conscious homes. And I want to first start out by just kind of highlighting. Well, before we jump into questions, you are an architect and you build and create conscious homes. There are so many ways that our home can influence us and why it's essential for our life. What does the research show as a relation? What does the research tell us about what it actually means for people to be happy as they age and how that relates
Mm,
to the home and the sanctuary space
mhm,
that we're living in?
mhm, mhm. That's a good question. It's right at the heart of the whole matter of conscious home design. You notice in my logo, the very center space is a heart. Home is where the heart
Yes.
is, but the core is really about that. What really, uh, what do we know ultimately makes us feel like our lives are rich and fulfilled and leads to
Mhm,
our happiness and even our health and life expectancy. Um, just a point of clarification before we dive into that is when I say conscious home design, it, it's interesting and people think, oh, that's curious. What does that mean? And the mind oftentimes will run towards maybe alternative building materials like straw bale or different types of designs or something that's eco-friendly or maybe they're thinking feng shui or some sort of energetic thing. And conscious home design, the way I've defined it, is actually not any of those things, but it can be any of those things. It can include them, but it's not specifically any of those. Conscious home design is really about the human experience and saying, well, what makes our lives better, and let's create space for that. And so it's style agnostic. So um, you could like something that's very modern, or you could like something that's very traditional, or any kind of style. And of course, it's going to apply to that. And you could have a little cottage, 600 square foot cottage, or you could have a 6,000 square foot home. And, whether you're in a cottage or a castle and whatever style, conscious home design is applicable to that. So it's not a specific style or a certain building material. It could be alternative materials or conventional, whatever you have. So it's more of an approach starting with the people that will live there rather than the architecture itself. It's really
mhm,
based on the people. So um, when I was writing the book, I had doing my research. I had a big long 50-page Google document of all the notes that I had gathered over 20 years of practice in architecture, and all my wake up at 3 a.m. in the night with an idea and scribble it down, and I had collected all those things, and even notes from back in college, and just things reflecting upon projects that went well, projects that I saw could have improved, or different experiences, from decades of practice. And I put them all into this one big document and said, well, I know, how's this going to be a book? What is this thing? And as I was drilling down, I realized that um, I didn't want to write a 40 chapter book, and people didn't need to have all of the information that I have. It wasn't, no one's going to read that, right? No one wants to read a 40 chapter book about architecture. It's boring. It's dry. I'm not trying to teach students. I'm trying to make something accessible. So as I got into it, I said, well, what really matters? And I said, oh, it's the human experience. That's what matters. And so I was able to winnow out and narrow it down to just 12 chapters and say, these are the things that really move the needle in terms of our happiness. This century, since we turned the corner of the millennium, we've made so much progress in technology and all of our apps and measuring, smart homes and measuring energy efficiency and all that stuff. And there's, total technological wizards out there that specialize in that. And we've also made steps into measuring how, the embodied energy, or how much impact our materials have. If you use this one, is it sustainable, et cetera, et cetera. Um, so I said, well, those things are great, but they don't ultimately make you happy. You could have a stylish home, or a technologically connected home, or an eco-friendly home, but that feels good, and it does contribute to your happiness, but it's not the biggest predictor of happiness. And so in my research, I found the study by Harvard that they started in 1938, and it was the adult study on human happiness, that they studied thousands of individuals over all these decades, and they've all passed on. I believe they're studying their children and maybe possibly even grandchildren at this point. And they would just check in with them and do detailed intake, questionnaires and physical tests, physical checkups and stuff to track what's happening with these people. And they found that whether they had, health or sickness, whether they had business success or failure, the single biggest thing that made people happy and was statistically showed increased life expectancy was the quality of their relationships. And so I looked at that and I thought, wow, what does that mean? And they didn't specifically, that wasn't limited to a romantic relationship, so it doesn't matter if you're married or not. There's, we have many types of relationships. And so I was really wanting to build opportunity for relationships into the home. So the heart is really about your relationships, your connections, your human connections.
Yeah, well, thank you for so beautifully laying that out. And I definitely, there's so many points in my life. Like, I'm very grateful to grow up in a very loving environment and a loving home. And I think that,
Yeah.
as an adult, we can all look back at our life and think like, oh, that could be different or that can be different. But really, the staple and the core is, the roof that we lived under and the stability that provided and the loving space. And we'll get into a little bit more here in a minute about like the essential areas of the home and like what they can mean and how they can, the bedroom or the great room or the kitchen, things like that. But
Mhm.
I mean, I don't want to say I agree with Harvard because clearly they've done the study and they have the data and research, but that just makes so much sense, doesn't it? Even when you look back in your own lineage of like
Yeah.
the happiness is like people always want to come home. They say
Yeah.
come home for the holidays. Like we're in the height of the holiday seasons and it just feels good to have, I always say home is my home base. I travel a lot for work. Mark and I love vacation, but if I'm being completely honest, it doesn't matter what beach I'm on or wherever I'm going, or how exciting and thrilling it is. Like, I can't wait to get home. And a cozy weekend at home is really what makes me the most happy, to be quite
Mm.
honest, curled up with
Mhm.
a good book and just really enjoying our space. So that makes so much sense to me.
Yeah.
Were you going to say something there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm just even seeing in your studio there, in your background, I see a
Oh,
couple of different relationships that you have embedded into your office there.
yeah.
And as I was diving into this whole concept of, well, if relationships, if our connections are what makes us um, happy and lead to a rich, fulfilled, feeling of fulfillment in life. Um, and that has to expand beyond our romantic relationships. What does that mean? I mean, relationship, there's so many different kinds.
Mhm.
Let's start to think about that. And so,
Right.
as I was, exploring this issue, I I found that there are really three broad categories of relationship, and all the relationships that a person has, I think, are going to fall into one of these categories. And so those are our giving, receiving, and reciprocal relationships. So if you can imagine you and I are having a reciprocal relationship. We're seeing eye to eye. We're, your colleagues, your coworkers, your peers, people were, your friends, people that you can hang out with and let your hair down and just sort of talk, straight on equal footings, talk straight from the heart and just share information, tell you stories about what's going on with you, or share knowledge. There's an equal give and take that goes back and forth. And
Mhm.
so, we all have those types of relationships, and we certainly like them, and they go beyond just a relationship with a spouse or a romantic partner. That's also an example of a reciprocal relationship. But it's only one example of a reciprocal relationship. We have many. And so, um, we also have our giving relationships, which are going to be those that we have with, perhaps if we are mentoring someone, or if we're teaching others, right? Or if we're parenting and taking care of children. Our giving relationships can even extend to plants and animals, where we are the primary giver or nurturer or provider, for these. So we have our, whether I see you've got a couple of plants there, maybe a Dracaena, a snake plant, which is actually in my book listed as one of the 5 best plants for indoor air quality according to the NASA study. So yeah, for indoor air quality, that's one of the best ones. And I see it right there on your desk. And
Mhm.
so, that's a giving
That's
relationship,
that's that's
I
by
mean,
design. Yeah.
and even our giving relationships, all relationships are going to have an element of give and take. There's going to be
Mhm.
some sort of hidden receiving in the relationships that we're giving. But at face value, it's primarily a giving relationship, right? There's that,
Mhm.
how we categorize that. And then, of course, we have our receiving relationships where we are the receiver. And that's going to be things we have with our teachers or our mentors or our elders, our parents, our ancestors, our heroes, or sports figures
Mhm.
or religious or spiritual figures, anyone where we're receiving care or inspiration or knowledge or encouragement to grow, to stretch, to reach into a greater version of ourselves, to try to find the edges of our possibility and just, become a new version of ourselves. That's, so all 3 types of relationship are, essential in our life. And as we move through our journey, we're going to experience different quantities of each one at different phases. New parents, man, they're going to just be giving, 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 giving for years. It's going to feel very unbalanced for a while. But in the scope, in the big picture of their whole life journey, you're going to find lots of opportunities for the different types for a balance of relationships. So what I do in conscious home design is I say, if we know that relationships are really the low hanging fruit, that's the essential thing. Home is where the heart is. Our connections, our family connections, our relationships, are essential to us. What does it look like if we create space with the intention of fostering or supporting our relationships, all 3 in the home? And not just all 3 in the home, but what would happen if we created opportunity intentionally for all 3 types of relationship, giving, receiving, and reciprocal, in every room of the house? What would that look like? So, um, well, I can give you some examples of that. But first, I thought, I'll take a pause and see if you have any questions or comments on that bit.
Oh, well, I obviously probably have also I agree with all of it. That is actually one of the things I wrote down was, I mean, it's very interesting that you noticed my plants because as soon as we popped on, I was like, ooh, I'm looking at the plants, I'm looking at that light, I'm looking at everything about the vibe around you because I created my office space, beautiful plant, like the relationship I have with this space and what I create and what I do in this space is so important to me that I put a ton of intention into everything that I see and everything that's around me as well. So this is just my office space, but I kind of want to dip into, I don't know if that's where you're going, but can we dip into a little bit of like, let's talk about what a great room looks like, the heart of the home, or can we talk a little bit about what a healthy kitchen looks like or a cozy bedroom.
Sure. Sure. So yeah, absolutely. So I should have taken a sip of water while you were
I know,
talking.
let's do it. I was gonna say, so let's maybe dig into the 9 essentials. Does that feel good to you?
Um, I there's an example that I really love to use for relationships as a place, because people think, well, what does that actually look like? You want to build opportunity for all three relationships into every room of the
Mhm,
house, how
mhm,
what does that look like? Is that possible?
mhm,
Um, And so, um, I'd like to start with the example of a space that people do not typically think of as a space that fosters relationship. The kitchen, the dining room, the great room, the family room, those are sort of obvious choices. That's where relationships happen.
mhm,
But if we step back, I can show that even in a room that's it seems like it's just a utilitarian room where you just go ahead, you only go there just to be by yourself and do your business. It's actually a prime opportunity to build relationship connections and that is the bathroom.
mhm.
So no one
I
thinks
did
of the
not
bathroom as a relationship building room. Yes, but it
I
can
did not
be.
I did not think you were going there, but, I am
Yes,
so
right.
curious to hear more.
Right. And so I love starting with the bathroom as an example of how to build relationships into your house because it's actually a place where we go every day and it's a place where we refresh and rejuvenate and it's a little bit of self-care there. And so we can actually intentionalize and deepen that just a little bit, just a thoughtful moment, even just 2 or 3 minutes every day, can set up a positive feedback loop and nurture us, right? And just make it go a little bit more, permeate into the bones, into the bone marrow a little bit more deeply. This idea of a connected life. So,
Mhm,
something that's we're seeing happening already is many, particularly in a master or a primary bathroom, you may have a double bowl sink. So you can brush your teeth side by side with your the person you're sharing space with. And sometimes people, if they have the space and if their lifestyle, if this suits them in terms of how they want to live, they may even have a jacuzzi tub or an oversized tub where they can soak for two people, or a shower, this an oversized shower room with two heads. So that's an opportunity where you can have a relationship, with someone else. Um, but there's also, if you have a window, if you have any natural light, a sunny window in your bathroom, you can certainly put a couple of plants and create more of a garden-like atmosphere in there. And so that there's an example of a giving relationship. You might even want to do a little fish bowl or a small aquarium or something. So every day you go in and you're brushing your teeth and you could just sprinkle a little food and say, "Hi, fish, how are you doing?" And then you have this little bit of a relationship, a connection with someone, and get a brightly colored one that gives you a spark of joy, when you see it. And you can certainly put a photo of someone that you love or that cares for you, a parent or an elder or a spiritual figure, or a quote even, that you
mhm,
can look at while you're there washing your face and presenting getting your body ready and presentable for everyone else. You can just take a moment to reflect on that quote or gaze at that photo and just realize, someone cares about me. Someone is encouraging me
mm,
to be my best, or if I can't be my best today, they're encouraging me to just, accept, who I am and be okay with that and celebrate the wins that I have made in life. And so, there's an example of all three types of relationship in the bathroom. And so I encourage people to go room by room to their house and, this can sort of do a self check-in. So in addition to the book, I also wrote, which is all the big ideas. I wrote the workbook here, which is designed to extract those ideas, with these worksheets and
mhm,
exercises. And so one of the exercises you do is we go through all the rooms of your house and uh, see where are my opportunities to build connection, and self check in. What are my strongest relationships? What are some of my weaker relationships? Are there any gaps? Is there anything I'd like to change? Is there a type of relationship that I see I would like to create more of in my life. And so that's our opportunity to go around and with intentionality, just dedicate a little bit of space to that. Does that make sense? It's a,
It makes total sense.
very, very practical way. And you don't have to do architecture. You don't have to go knocking down walls or creating new space, right? With these techniques. It's just about dedicating a little bit of space to, like I see you have a couple, a photo back there, in addition to the plants, right? So that's two types of
Mhm.
relationships you have right there in just 2 square feet of real estate there. So, and I'm sure if we went through your house, there would be a lot more examples because I know
I
you're a
was
very
gonna
thoughtful person, Jen.
Oh, thank you so much, Taylor. Like I said, secretly, I have just been poring over all of this information, and this is so, so close to my heart to do this type of work because I think, I don't know, we're just living in such a fast-paced Amazon Prime mindset. And,
Yeah,
so many beautiful conveniences that we're living in. And you had mentioned smart
definitely.
homes and the convenience of having all these things. And
Hmm.
I don't know, what I've learned is that we didn't come here for a pile of things. We came here for relationships and connection and love. And although I love nice things, I like having a nice, comfortable home. I like modern amenities. I'm not going to lie. Clearly,
Sure.
I enjoy um, that type of abundance in my life as well. But I also am of the mindset of like, if I'm going to invest in something, if I'm going to buy something and bring it into my home, energetically, I want to feel something from it. And that's not everything, of course, but like, even if first of all, before we move on, never in a million years would I think about putting a picture of somebody I love in my bathroom. So I've learned something today, but I
Ah,
love that idea or a quote or something because you're
yes.
right. We start our day standing in that room, looking at ourselves in the mirror, having self talk right out of the gate, preparing ourselves to do whatever it is we're going to do that day. So it only makes sense that that is a great spot to really create foundational relationships and energetic experience. So I'm going to be making some notes on that.
I'm
But
so glad
even,
you get it. Yes, absolutely. That's exactly right. It's where we're there every day, and even though it's only a few minutes,
yeah,
it can be extremely valuable. Those minutes can actually set the tone for not just for your day, but for your life, right? Because
right.
little daily routines and rituals add up, and what does that do over years and decades? It's
Mm,
like the butterfly effect, the the flapping of a butterfly's wings in Brazil eventually set off a tornado in Texas, right? There's this ripple effect, and so, what happens if every day you're having these affirmations of, oh, I am loved, or someone cares for me, and I also
mm,
have capacity to love and give caring to others. Here's my fish, or here's my plant, or here's whatever kind of relationship I have. And so a picture of your child, a picture of your ancestor, a picture of your hero or spiritual inspiration. So, yeah,
yeah,
so good.
it is so good. I know. Like I
It
said, this
seems
was
so
such a,
simple, but it's so powerful. And it's just like why I think people intuitively do this. We sort of do it, but it's a little bit, it might be a little haphazard. And I'm trying to help people use it intentionally, because it can just be so much more effective. It's like you can just throw seeds in your garden and they'll probably grow. But if you nurture them properly, they're going to grow, they're going to
right,
produce, they're going to grow faster and be more abundant in their harvest. And it's the same thing
right.
for our lives. If we intentionally shape and help, our home,
Hmm.
Winston Churchill had this amazing quote. He said, "We shape our buildings and thereafter they shape us." And it's so
Ooh,
true, right? Because, once we inhabit them, it's like that's it. Our routines and even the very paths we travel are dictated by the space we have. And so we want to shape it to our advantage. We want to put it to work for us so that it's lifting us into our goals, into the vision we have for our future for ourselves.
hmm. Yeah, I think that there are just areas, and what I like about the 9 different categories is like even like the entryway. the way in
Yes.
which that you enter in, and we'll maybe come back to that in a minute. But some of these, like just going back to the bathroom, I'm excited and I'm kind of fixated on this right now because we're just about to start a master bathroom renovation project actually here in the next
Yeah.
coming months. And so now I've got a whole different
Okay.
mindset and different shift going. We'll talk about that offline, but like
Sure.
even an entryway. Let's talk about an entryway because I think that that too is just a
Mm,
space
mhm.
where people maybe don't think about. But what are your
Right.
thoughts on the
Oh,
relationship when someone walks into your home?
it's so rich. It's so rich. The entry foyer or entryway, vestibule, however it takes shape in your home. Hopefully you have one. I see a lot of houses where they just walk through a door and they land at the bottom of the staircase, or they land right into the living room or right into the kitchen. And there's no,
Yeah.
receiving room. There needs to be an area to receive you because it's inherently a high friction zone. If you think about an airplane when it's coming in for the landing, it's going, a couple hundred miles an hour. Well, depending on the size of the plane, how fast the speed is, but
Hmm.
even a larger one is doing more than 100 miles an hour, and it's coming in, but the wheels, they're not moving at all. And every time an airplane lands, it's like, the tires spin and they blow off smoke, and, they leave, skid marks on the thing. And, we have our home. We're trying to create this sanctuary, this place where we can just be ourselves. It's a safe place. And
Right.
outside in the world, in the public, it's a whole different energy. And so, not even talking about the energetic shift of coming from outside, from public to private, but just the practical
Mhm.
shift of coming from outside to inside. You may have hats and gloves and coats and rain gear and boots. You may have keys and cell phone and handbag in your, to set down. You may have arms full of groceries or other things that you've collected from your travels and adventures out into the world that day.
Mhm.
And so you are coming in and you have all of this stuff. And what do you do with it? Where does it go? You need to have a receiving room that's properly sized for the type of transition you're going to make. If you live in a tropical climate where the weather is very consistent and very mild, then that's going to require a little bit different looking space than a mud room that you might have in Wisconsin or Vermont, right?
Mhm.
So the size, it's not a one size fits all, but there does need to be a transition zone, a place for that. I see so many times when people don't have the right sized or the right designed entryway, is things get cluttered, and things end up being placed here and there. Things perhaps get lost. Oh, where's my keys? Where's my wallet? Where's my phone? People can't find it because there's not a place to put it. So
Right.
I like building systems in so that things can go. You're yelling at your kids or you're yelling at your spouse, "Hey, pick up your shoes or put this thing." It's like, it's not that they're lazy. It's just that they don't have a system for a place to put those things. And if we can build a system for them so that everything, hey, when I take off my coat, it goes right here. If I have an umbrella, it always goes right here. And there's a place for everything. Then
Mhm.
the interaction time you're having with the people you love and live with isn't nagging about keeping things tidy. It's more meaningful connections and relationships, right? So that's a fundamental way that having the right space can boost your relationships, but it goes so much deeper in the entry space because the entry space is also the receiving. And sometimes you come home alone and and maybe everything is clean and everything's tidy and everything is in place. But you come home and what do you see? And it's a great place to put a reminder, perhaps an image, a painting, a photograph, even a collage of photographs of something that you love, of something that reminds you of your um, your most meaningful connections in life. So you can have a
Mhm.
picture of again, giving relationships, receiving relationships, reciprocal relationships. Put something in there that reminds you of those relationships. And then also, when guests come, they're going to see that. And you're telling your guests the story of your life. It's a little piece of you. And then they can see, oh, this person, I've come to their home and immediately they're communicating their value system to them. They're telling me what something personal, what makes life rich for them. And that's a way to, if you're inviting them into your home, you're wanting to have some sort of authenticity with them, a little bit of connection, and they can see it right there. It's presented. That's coming home. Let's turn it around. And that's like, okay, now we're about to go out. We're about to leave and head out into the world. Wouldn't it be nice to be centered? Wouldn't it be nice to be reminded of who we are and what our value is so that we can show up on our best, with our best foot forward, so to speak?
Mm.
And so what I have in my house is right by the front door is I have an inspirational quote. It's actually a poem that I love so much. And I took a couple lines from that poem and I put them in the forward of my book. I dedicated my book to this. I have that on my thing. And I also have a cover of my book framed, Conscious Home Design, by the door so that when I'm leaving, I have these reminders right there in front of me of here from this poem where I'm receiving inspiration, and here from this thing is my giving. Here's me serving the world. And so I can also remind myself what's important to me before I head forth out into the great blue yonder. So the entry space is so rich. It's such an opportunity to nurture relationships.
Oh my gosh, Taylor. Any chance you can read to me what that says? I'm dying to know what that quote is.
You want to know the
What does it say on the way out
you
the
want
door?
you want me to do a spoiler right here? What about
I
the
want to
people that it's
just give
actually
a slight teaser.
it's actually the dedication. The
Okay.
dedication of my book is a poem called "The Noble New." It's a bit of a poem by Yogananda, and it says, "Sing songs that none have sung, think thoughts that never in brain have rung." And so the poem is much longer than that, but that's the
Yeah.
first lines. Sing songs that none have sung. So that to me, that says, be original. Try to come up with
Mm,
something new. Try to contribute something unique to the world. Everyone is an individual. We have so many commonalities, but we all have something totally unique. Find that and sing that song. Yes?
mm.
Because there's something, Jen, that only you can do on planet Earth. There's a message that you have for someone out there. Find that person, tell them your message. Or whatever it is. Maybe you're not a messenger. Maybe you're just a maker, and maybe you have something, a gift to do. Whatever your unique thing is, find it and do it. So sing songs that none have sung, think
Mm.
thoughts that never in brain have rung. And so that's really where the first it's a thought and then it's a song. So for me, that's the inspiration is I try to do things, that's where the value is, that's me being me. It's like, if I'm just cloning and doing what someone else is doing, then that's, there's value to that too. I don't want to put that down in any stretch, but I do especially love this idea that everyone has a unique quality or gift that they can share. So that's what conscious home design is about finding that gift and supporting it. Whatever that looks
Well,
like for you.
well, I think we're singing your gifts today, by the way. I think that this is so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Sorry to put you on the spot, but I
No,
was
it's okay.
dying to know what that was.
Oh, it's fine.
So
Yeah.
So the
Wonderful.
framework, yeah, we kind of started, I jumped right into a couple of the rooms, but do you want to walk through or just mention, I mean, we talked about the bathroom, the entry. Do you want to talk about, what the other, like the full nine framework, the full, all nine areas of the home? And then also, if we can for a minute, I know I mentioned the kitchen, but I'm curious what you would say if you could pick the next room we talked about. What do you think is an important space in this framework that people
Oh,
could take away from today? I think you've already given them a ton of nuggets about
sure.
entry and bathroom, but what do
Sure.
you think? Where do you think people have the most opportunity?
That's a really good question. And, you know, it's kind of like, it's almost like saying, what's your favorite organ? And it's like, well, I kind of like my heart. I like my lungs. The liver's pretty cool too. Oh, wait, there's my kidney. Oh, my stomach. Oh, I love my stomach. Boy, what would I do without my stomach? It's kind of like the home is an ecosystem. Conscious home design is a holistic look at everything there's opportunity for every single room has the potential to really support you. It's like cylinders in an engine, and when they're all firing properly, you get the maximum horsepower, right? And so we're trying to tune up your life, tune up your home to, shift your home, shift your life. And so that's really what it is. And so we can make progress in any area, and it's really individual. Like the person needs to go through and do their own assessment. Where are my gaps? And if the person says, you know what, I said I was going to have a meditation practice or a prayer ritual, but I'm not doing it, and so, well, that's a gap. And so that's the most effective space to work on. That's the most effective room or place where we need to dedicate some time and space. Another person says, oh, I'm actually not meeting my exercise. I made a New Year's resolution to have this certain exercise routine, and I just, it's week 3 and I haven't done it anymore. So now we have to focus on that and help you. And so it really is a personal assessment as to where you're going to get the maximum value of applying conscious home design. It's hard for me to say that this particular room is the one that's going to be universally the best. Of course, the kitchen is such a massive mover of the needle because it's where we prepare our food, our nutrition. Yeah. And so we could certainly talk about kitchens. We could talk about kitchens for days. But one of the things that I like to do in a kitchen is explore what kind of meals you want to prepare, and say, how many meals per day or per week do you want to make? Do you want to do quick meals because you have a very busy life and you don't want to spend a lot of time in the kitchen? Or do you have time and you love cooking and you want to invest 45 minutes or an hour making a big meal from scratch, And so, maybe during the week you're doing quick meals, and maybe on the weekend you're taking the time. And, so what does your ideal kitchen use look like based on your lifestyle? And so then we can start to create a kitchen that actually has the right amount of counter space and proximity of things. I've seen these incredible, beautiful kitchens that you see on the magazines, and the Pinterest and the Instagram, they have the wow factor, right? And they've spent $100,000 on appliances, another $100,000 on counters and cabinets, right? And it's just this glorious, oh my God, look at that kitchen. Wow. It's like a cathedral, right? But the refrigerator is 20 feet away from the sink. Try to make a sandwich in a kitchen like that. You open up the refrigerator, you want to get out mustard and mayonnaise and lettuce and bread and cheese and tomato and all these things. It's like there's no room in your arms, and you gotta carry it all over so you can wash off the tomato into the sink. It's very inefficient, And so what happens is, I know myself, if I'm feeling it's the end of the day, or if it's the morning and I'm short on time, or it's the end of the day and maybe I'm feeling a little bit run down or tired, exhausted from the day, I don't have all the extra effort to go through the obstacle course of my own kitchen to try to make a meal. And so I'm going to find that I'm starting to take shortcuts. And as I take shortcuts, that means I diminish the depth, the nutritional value, the quality of the food that I'm preparing. I may just get something frozen and reheat it, or I may even do takeout, and say, I just don't have to want to cook there. And so an efficiently laid out kitchen is going to, contribute to, little by little, over days, years, and decades. It's going to help us keep our nutrition levels high. We're going to have better quality meals, more well-rounded. So I'm an evangelist about the kitchen. And, in conscious home design, I've actually said, I've called it out. I say, everyone thinks that the 3-point kitchen, the triangle, is the gold standard. It's the triangle between the sink, the refrigerator, and the stove. Mm-hmm. And I say, well, maybe that was true 100 years ago. When stove and refrigeration, was invented, when we stopped having a wood burning stove and we were started to be able to run electricity in our houses, and we had refrigeration, and that became the gold standard. But that was 100 years ago. we've learned so much more about the science of human excellence and nutrition and health since then. And so now I've created what I call the 5-point kitchen. The 5-point kitchen has the traditional stove, refrigerator, and sink, but it
Mhm.
also adds a sprouting and growing station and a juicing station, an extraction station. And so you want to have these things set up. So again, if we have the space, right, and you have a sunny window, then you can you can hang some jars with some alfalfa seeds and do some sprouts. You can grow a little tray of wheatgrass, or you can have a little basil, a few little herbs, basil and thyme and sage or oregano, little plants. It doesn't have to be, you're not sustaining yourself. You're not growing a massive garden that's going to satisfy all of your needs, but even just a little bit there that you can pull off just a leaf and throw it into your cooking. Again, there's your giving relationship. It's reinforcing that. And it's also making the space feel more homey and more inviting. You have a little garden, your kitchen, again, like the bathroom, we're encouraging it to feel more garden-like. And
Mhm.
that's going to be really, really helpful. And if you can take those sprouts and throw them through an extractor, or if you can take, a bunch of mixed greens and some carrots from the refrigerator, from the produce drawer, and run them through a juice extractor, then you can have some green, you can have some vitality. It's liquid chlorophyll and all the vitamins and things. And it's 10 times better than having, multivitamins. Just go ahead and do a big green juice, a real green juice. So that is, I especially encourage the sprouting and juicing station for people that are into the quick meals, where you can because in the time it takes you to make a cup of coffee, you can also make a green juice. And so I would say, you don't have to give up
Mm.
your coffee. I would say, go ahead and have your coffee, hit the coffee maker, let it do it. And while that thing is brewing, you're over here pushing some greens through your extractor, so you can do 3 or 4 ounces of green goodness, at the same time. And then you can have your coffee if you want. So these are, especially if we're doing shortcuts and we're really fast, and you want those high nutrient, high value foods or smoothies that you can refresh yourself with. So kitchens, I think, is probably one of the biggest impact spaces in our lives.
Oh my goodness. I couldn't agree more on that. We're I- I'm creating a checklist in my mind right now, by the way, of all the different things. We're very fortunate to have a lot of windows in our home, and actually, you mentioned it. You mentioned something called the sunny window effect.
Yeah,
I don't know if you want to dig it. Like maybe we can chat
sure,
about that for a second. But
sure.
we bought this house because of the windows, and I'm honestly thinking in my mind right now, I'm underutilizing my window space in my kitchen. Like they're
Mm,
beautiful and
mm-hmm.
it's bright and it's spacious, but oh boy, I think I'm missing out. I need to maybe be adding a few things. So talk to me a little bit about what the sunny window effect is.
Sure. So when I was a kid, I noticed that the family pets, whether it was the dog or the cat, both of them, if there was a beam of light coming in through the window, shining on the floor, a sunny patch on the floor, or on a chair, if it was a couch, but there was one cushion that was sunny and the other ones were dark, the cat or the dog would always be in the sunny patch. They were
Yeah.
attracted to it. And you can look at a room, even if it's beautiful, really tastefully decorated and very attractive. When the sunlight shines in and fills that space, it brightens it up. It's so much more inviting. It's so much more
Mm.
welcoming. Whereas, when you can just be standing there looking at the room, and suddenly a cloud passes by and the sun goes dark, and suddenly that room is not as attractive anymore. It's just not as welcoming. It suddenly gets dim, or if
Right.
the curtains are pulled, you know. And so I said, wow, the sun is life. The sun, we're
Mm.
attracted to the sun, like a moth to a flame in a sense, we're attracted to the light. Yeah. Especially those of us who are living in a northern climate, right? We want to have, because we have 6 months of winter and
Here we
very
are. Yeah.
short days and long nights, and so, any bit of sun you can get is very helpful. So
Mhm.
I like to, if I'm designing a home from scratch for someone, I like to put the kitchen in the southeast because it's going to
Mm.
get that first morning light that comes up. And my grandmother always told me breakfast is the most important meal of the day. And so if your kitchen is warm and inviting and welcoming because of that sunlight, then it's going to invite you in, and maybe you're going to spend that extra 5 minutes of making a slightly more nutritionally substantial meal for yourself than if it was just tucked away in a closet and was inefficient and you didn't like it and it just felt like a laundry room or something, very utilitarian, and it didn't feel like
Mhm.
it was a space of creation, of beauty, of bounty, of nurturing. So I'm trying to create a kitchen that puts the power of nature on our side. We're working with nature rather than ignoring it. And so
Mm.
I just last week I did a podcast with someone in Australia, and in the Southern Hemisphere, we want to put the kitchen in the Northeast because
Mm.
the South is shaded. It gets daylight, but it doesn't get direct sunlight coming in. So it's the opposite in the Southern Hemisphere. But for those of us in North America and elsewhere, anywhere in the Northern Hemisphere, kitchen in the southeast is the ideal, and that also is going to give more chance for sprouting and growing plants. If you want to grow some herbs or some sprouts to boost and bolster and round out your nutrition, that's a great way to do it. So knowing the sunny window effect, we can actually put it to use for us in other rooms of the house. Um, Something that I see happening a lot is people turning their basements into home gyms, and this happened,
Mm.
it's been common. People have been doing this forever because it's like this leftover space. Hey, let's convert that and do something down there. And, they'll get some exercise equipment and put it down there. Um, and, if that's the only space you have, then that's a good choice, but it's not the best choice. It's not the best place for a gym. I think, especially, if you're an athlete and you're just highly motivated by your goals are pulling you forward and you're very disciplined and you have your routine and you're very energetic and exercise comes naturally to you. And it's not like there's a hurdle you have to get over to start your routine, to keep your routine. Then, for those of us who struggle to maintain our exercise routine, it's so much rather than building a tortured dungeon for yourself, with equipment that's just going to make you sweat. It's not very inspiring. It's like, oh, I'm just going to go pump iron, or I have to get on this treadmill and just walk nowhere for half an hour. It's like, it's dark. The air quality, may smell musty. You just want to, if you're feeling a little bit tired or a little bit pressed for time, or just like, what, I don't want to make myself sweat. What I really want is to nurture myself and give and take care of myself. You're just going to close the door and be like, out of sight, out of mind, and you're not going to go down there. So in conscious home design, I'll say, okay, we know that you have to move your body. It's just like in the podcast that you had with Chris, use it or lose it, right? And so
Yeah.
if you want to move your body, instead of saying, hey, I'm going to get this exercise equipment or these weights or this thing, let's say, how do you like to move your body? Is there something that you actually like doing? Do you like to do yoga postures? Do you like to do Tai Chi or a martial arts workout? Do you like to dance? What's a way to move your body that you actually think is fun or enjoyable? Let's focus on that. And then let's create a space where you can do that. Let's set that
Mm.
up, and if you find that you're still having hard time keeping with the routine, then if we can put that space in a room, if you say, well, I like to work out in the morning, or no, I'm going to do my exercise in the middle of the day when the kids are at school, or no, I'm going to do my exercise at the end of the day after we get home in the late afternoon. Then we can
Mm.
choose what part of the house based on the path of the sun to locate your exercise area so that it's sunny when you go to that room. And so you have A, you're doing something you love. B, it's in an inviting and welcoming space. This is putting the art of architecture to work in your favor, to help you to remove those friction points and those obstacles to you achieving your goals.
Wow. Yes. Again, I'm like thinking in my mind, how we move about our home throughout the day to follow the sun, and the way in which that you're describing the gym because I think that that's a struggle for a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
People want to move their body, they have good intentions, they create the space in their home. I mean, as you know, and listeners know, like I work with saunas and different modalities that you can bring in there in your home. And one of the conversations I have often is people are like, yeah, I have a lot of these things and I don't use them. Like, do you think I'm actually going to use the sauna? And I just what you just
Yeah.
said. I usually take a deep breath and I'm like, I think that's that's a you
Hmm.
question. Like I don't have that answer. I think you do, and it's within, and it's under your roof. And I usually go into the conversation of like, what is the experience you want to have? Like, where do you want to put this? A lot of people are like, well, I think I'm going to put it in the garage. Do you really want to look at your car when you're relaxing
Yeah.
and restoring and meditating? Is that really the most thoughtful place for you to put this? And then they end up telling me, no, I actually want to put it in my bedroom, but I don't think my spouse will let me, or I'm not sure I have enough space. And it's like, well, create the
Hmm.
space, like create the
Okay.
wellness corner, bring it closer to your
Yeah.
life so you're actually going to use it. And it's just
Hmm.
so interesting that we look outward at the things. And again, kind of going back to like the whole pile of things thing, right? Like we can have all of these things in a space under our roof, but if they're more consciously aligned with our lifestyle and our priorities and what's really important to us and how we move about our day, my life looks different. I don't have children versus somebody who has 4 or 5 children under their roof, right? Like their day looks different.
Yeah.
And so there's no one size fits all. And
That's
that's
right.
again why I wanted to talk to you today and share this out is that everybody needs to kind of look inward at what the priorities are and where the gaps are and where what they would like to do to bring more conscious healing to their home, conscious living to their space, and just really harmonizing it in a way that works with their life, with nature, instead of creating these roadblocks. So,
That is so right, Jen. Like you're bringing up so many very cogent points here. Conscious home design is about the individual. It's about meeting you where you are.
right.
People are going to be at different places with different preferences, with different goals. Conscious home design really wants to listen, understand who are you? Okay, if this is what you say you want, here's how we can help you get there.
Mhm,
You talked about people perhaps even having the space or having the equipment or something, but not using it, and so when I'm doing the assessment, when I'm working with a client, is I say, okay, you've gone through, you've said you have this goal, you said you want this thing, but you're not achieving it. And I say, well, okay, why? And it could be that, well, you simply don't have space for it. You don't have a space dedicated to that activity. There's no room for it. You haven't built opportunity for yourself to win
mhm,
at that goal. And so I say, well, the first thing we need to do is start creating space to get there, so that you can do that. And then, sometimes the person says, well, no, I have this space, but I'm not using it. I say, okay, well, why? Let's look at it. And it turns out that maybe it's the space that they intended to be used for this thing, but actually it's become a junk room. And now they're storing everything in there, and their Christmas decorations are in there in a box, and the old clothes from the other season are stuffed in there, and there's papers everywhere. And so now there's no room. You've crowded yourself out. You've defeated your intention by misusing the space. No blame, no guilt. It's just the way it is, right? And so it's like, okay, well, once we know that, we can take steps to alleviate or correct that. And then the other thing could be, say you like to play the cello, or you have a musical instrument. You say, oh, it just gives me so much joy to play the cello, but the only time I have to play is after the kids go to bed. But the problem is the room where I play my cello, it's right next to the kids' bedroom. And so it's going to disturb them every night and I won't be able to sleep. And so I'm not playing. And so then what you have is you have a dedicated space that's nice for playing, for doing your activity, but there's an adjacency problem. It's in the wrong location in the house. So let's see,
mhm,
how can we place things so that they have the right amount of privacy and connection. Different activities require different levels of interaction and connection with other spaces in the house. So that's also a meaningful part of arranging. Once we understand who you are and what you want to live, we have to figure out how to actually shape your home and shape the space so that it supports those activities in the day-to-day flow of life, in the rhythm of your routine, so that it actually works. The most famous painting in the world is the Mona Lisa. Everybody knows the Mona Lisa, and it's celebrating 500 years old just in the teens. So we're just over the 500-year anniversary of the Mona Lisa, and in the centuries that it's been in existence, the pigment of the eyebrows faded off. So she's got no eyebrows. Everyone's wondering, why does she have no eyebrows? It's not that he didn't paint them; it's just that they faded because it's hundreds of years old, 500 years old. So anyway, more facts about the Mona Lisa is that it took Leonardo da Vinci more than 10 years to paint it. He was working at it for more than a decade. Some estimates range from 12 to 17 years, depending on, they're not exactly sure, but it was definitely more than a decade he was working on the painting. And so I just want to bring this back to our point, is that art, science, medicine, technology, all of our amazing human achievements and advancements are because of architecture. Without architecture, anything that we would work on, you'd be limited to what you could do, what you could accomplish in the space of a sunny afternoon, right? Because as soon as the weather changed or the wild animals came, it would just mess everything up. Architecture, the ability to control the environment and dedicate space to a certain activity, allows humanity to build on yesterday's achievements, and you can keep on going. And so the reason the Mona Lisa was possible, everyone says it takes time and effort to accomplish something, and that's true. We all know that that's the formula, right? But there's a missing piece. The missing piece from the time and effort formula is space. It also requires space to accomplish something. And so I'm all for dedicating space. If you dedicate space to an activity, you are exponentially more likely to succeed in doing that activity, even if it's just a hobby. Even if I say, hey, what fulfills you? What's a creative activity, Jen, that you like to do? And you say, well, I like to do podcasting, or I like to do journaling. I like to do creative writing. I like to do art and painting. I like whatever it is. Well, if you dedicate space to that activity, the way you've dedicated your space, your office, to allow you to do podcasting, you're much more successful as a podcaster because you have that space dedicated. So conscious home design is about saying, what moves you? What's valuable to you? Who do you want to be? Let's dedicate space for that. So that's the whole, that's the formula. That's the recipe for success right there.
That is the recipe for success. So if people want to work with you, I know you're in the beautiful state of Vermont, but you do have the ability to work with anyone anywhere, quite frankly. It sounds like you're working with someone in Australia, which I think is awesome. Anywhere. But I love the attention to detail, right? So how can people, well, first of all, the workbook and the book, I'd like for you to share where people can find that on your site. And then how can people work with you? What's the best way to connect with you?
So a great way is if anything I've said makes sense and resonates with someone and they want to get a copy of my book, they can just go to my website, conscioushomedesign.com, and they can buy a copy of the book and the workbook. I have physical copies. I'm happy to sign it and mail it off to you, or you can get a digital copy. You can buy an instant download PDF if you want. So that's a great way to get started. There's also a contact me form if you have an actual project that you want to work on, and you'd like to do a consultation with me, they can certainly make an inquiry there. But also starting the book will also get me on your list, and you can send me an email from that too. It's a great way to just do an initial, check in with yourself. Some people prefer to have done a little bit of their wish list before they talk with an architect. And that's what the Conscious Home Design workbook is all about. It's about extracting, that work. But also, if they just have a consultation call with me, then I can guide them through that. So anyway, going to my website, conscioushomedesign.com, is really you can choose your own adventure once you get there.
Gonna say it sounds like that's a home base, and yes, choose your own adventure. I think the workbook is a beautiful place, especially for those that might be like, I don't know where to start. But I love again the framework that you have that allows people to kind of go through their home, find their priorities, find their gaps,
That's
figure
right.
out ways where they have questions. Obviously, thank you for sharing where they can find and connect with you. I could talk about this all day, by the way. I love this conversation so much, and I'm so grateful that we were able to connect today and bring so much information and nuggets of joy on ways people can bring more conscious
I
design to
love
their
that
homes.
word. Joy. Yes.
Joy, isn't it a good word? It's so
Yeah.
good. But that's how I feel in our home. That's what I want to help others create in their home is more joy and stillness and peace and tranquility. And I'm just so, again, grateful for you taking the time to share all this with us today. So,
Oh, thank you for having me, Jen. If you get a lot of feedback and response and positive comments from the audience, then we can do it again next year. We can have a part two.
yeah, always open for a part two, Taylor. Thanks. Thank you so much. Take
Okay.
care.
All right. Bye.
Okay, friends and fellow wellness warriors, thanks for tuning in today. If this show was helpful and inspired you, please head over to Apple or Spotify to rate, review, subscribe, and follow us, as well as share it with your friends and family. It's a fantastic way to grow the show, expand my reach, and teach others how to create a vibrant life they love. If you're ready to invest in your health and purchase a Clear Light sauna, hop on over to jenhellerlifestyle.com and send me a note. Thanks again for tuning in. I love you. I'm grateful for you, and I thank you so much for your support. You are the reason I do this work. You are the reason I do this show. And you are the reason I get up every single day with a burning desire in my soul. Cheers to your health and happiness, my friends. We'll see you next week. This podcast is for general information purposes only and is not intended to be substituted for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. If you think you have a medical condition, consult your licensed physician.